In this video, I will introduce you to 4 new Alteryx tools, continuing on from the last video. The tools are Select, DateTime, which is over here in Parse, and I've added it to our favorites. Output data tool, and then finally a text input tool, which is what you use to create your own data. So first, let's illustrate the Select tool. Let's bring in the data set we had in the last video. So we will use the input data tool that I taught you about last time. What data do you want to input? Let's find the file. It's on our desktop here. Let's go look at the file. Let's get rid of this. Let's look at the data here for a second. Here's our data. First row, notice, is the contains the column headers or the column names, the variable names, the field names. So let's bring that in. It's right here, or we can go search our computer, but it's in our recent connections. Notice I could take the first 200 rows if I want to. That's where you would let Alteryx know how many rows to take. But we will take all the data. And then notice here, I didn't mention this last time, but first row contains the field names. Since in our data set, the first row, it is the variable names, we'll check this box. If the first row started with the data and there weren't field names, then we would uncheck this box. And Alteryx would assign field names to each variable. It would give the first variable, it would just say field 1, second one field 2. It would assign artificial names. But look, the first row, if we look at the preview of our data, the first row does have the field names, so we want to check that box. It's checked by default. So let's bring in our data. And then again, we want to use a browse tool so we can see all of our data, as we taught you last time. Also, the browse tool gives you information on each variable. If you click on the variable, remember it tells you the variable's type, it gives you some statistics about the variable. Also, it gives you if there are any null values on that variable or on that field. Notice birth date has 1 null value, and we saw last time it was down here on row 470. All right, let's bring in the Select tool, and we're going to attach it to our employee data tool. And as soon as you attach Select, you see over here in our tool configuration, all of the variables are listed, or all the fields are listed. There's 10 fields. The field name, the data type of the field. By default, Alteryx assigns a v-string, a variable string data type to all fields. The size of that data type. So each field in this data set is a v-string data type, and Alteryx assigns a size of 254 characters. That's the maximum number of characters in a given. So the ID number for the person can be at most 254 characters long, and so forth. Notice in our Select field, in our Select tool, there is an unknown field. That's not in our data, right? You recognize these first 10, but what's this unknown? What this is, this allows, if later on this data set adds another field, it'll just be added on at the end of our current data set. It'll be added on in the 11th column. So Alteryx by default gives you an extra field, a dynamic. It's known as a dynamic, you see here, description, dynamic or unknown fields, in case later on our data, we add on to our data, or in case our data set adds another column or another field. You can keep this checked or unchecked. It doesn't really matter. If we want to add data later, we can actually do that a different way. But just letting you know, I just leave it checked. It doesn't do anything. All right. So what we want to do here with select tool is we want to change the data type of our fields to the correct data type. Because certain data types you can do certain operations on. For example, if a data type of ID, or let's say, say data type of ID is vString. You can't add a data type vString. You would have to change the ID to number, some sort of numeric data type, before you could perform any arithmetic or arithmetic operations on it. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, why would you want to add the ID number? I don't see why you would in this case, but that's one reason though why you change data types, is so that data types that you want to perform some sort of operation on, some sort of arithmetic operation like addition, subtraction. Now you can count a non-numeric data type, right? You can get the total number of something. But if there's certain operations in Alteryx that you can't do unless the variable is of a certain data type, like numeric. There's certain operations you can't do on numeric variables that you can do on string or character variables. So data type does matter. You can change the data type at any time. Alteryx will let you know if you're trying to do an operation on a variable and it has the wrong data type. It will let you know down here in the messages. It'll be a red error message. The way you change the data types of the variables, again, is you use the select tool. You can also, with the select tool, rename the fields, rename the columns. So we're going to utilize both of these things here. So let's take each field, ID. If we go look at our data again, ID, it looks to be, it's just a number. It's a numeric representation, numeric identifier of the person. We don't have any names here. We just have their ID number. And it looks like ID is an integer. It's not a decimal. So technically, what we want to change ID to in terms of data type, if we know it's always an integer, is we want to change it to one of these three. Int 16. You take the 16, the number, and you divide it by 8. And that's the size of the integer. So if we make ID an integer of size 2, that's the maximum number of characters that that data type can take. But if we look at our ID field and we go down, you see it goes all the way up to 474, an integer of size 3. So if we make it an integer of size 2, we're going to lose the last number. This 474 will become 47, and so forth. So we don't want to do int 16. We could do int 32. That gives us an integer of size 4. None of the ID numbers are greater than 4 characters. We could do integer 64, and that's the biggest integer you can assign there, data type you can assign. But what I do for any numeric variable, I just get in the habit, I assign it a data type of double. Double has a maximum size of 8 characters. It allows for integers, it allows for decimals, and if it's a number that's greater than 8, it'll round it to the proper number. So I would just advise you to just use, if it's a numeric variable, use double. All right, gender, we can see it's M means male, F means female. So we can change gender to just string is fine, or vString. We could leave it as vString, that'd be fine. In fact, we don't need to change it. It is a character variable. Birth date. Birth date is a character and numeric sort of variable. So there's a data type called DateTime data type. And birth date, that's what we want to change birth date to. but I'm going to change birth date to a DateTime data type using the DateTime tool. This is the only data type where you want to use a different tool to change the data type other than select. If it's some sort of date or time, use the DateTime tool to change the data type. So instead of clicking here, type DateTime for birth date, we'll just leave it as vString and we'll change the data type with the DateTime tool. The reason is if you click DateTime here and and try to change the data type from the select tool, you're going to get an error because it's going to expect the date to be in a certain format, and if it's not, it won't change the data type to DateTime for you. You do want to change data types to DateTime because certain operations, if you try to do on a date, like what day of the week is this date? There's a function in Alteryx that you put this date into that function and it'll give you the day of the week. But if this variable is not a DateTime data type, that function will return an error because it expects that the thing you put into it to be a DateTime data type. And so you do want to change the date variables to DateTime data types, but we're not going to do it yet. We're going to do it with the DateTime tool. Education is numeric variable. It's just total years of education. 12 means you went through high school. Anything after that means you got through some of college. So we can put education as a double. It's numeric. Job category. 1 means manual labor. 3 means office job. And 2 is some sort of hybrid of the two. So job category takes on the value 1, 2, or 3. We probably want to change job category later on, and I'll show you how to do that. We want 1 to actually say manual labor, 3 office, 2 hybrid, and we'll change that later. But for now, because that's more descriptive, job category can be a double. Salary, both salary now and the salary of the employee when they began the job. It looks to be, we need to leave it as a vString. We don't want to change it to a double because it's not a number. There's a $sign there. So we'll leave it as vString, both of those. Job time. This is how many months the employee has been working at their current job. It's an integer. And we will just leave it as, or we will change it to double. I do want to change the name of that variable though. And this is where you change the name of the name of a variable. Excuse me. Let's change it to time on job. And then previous experience, this is how many months they had of experience in their previous job. We can change that to double. And then finally, minority. 0 means that the person is not a minority, and 1 means the person does belong to a minority ethnic group or racial group. And so let's change that variable. It's a 0, 1 variable. 0, 1 variables, we could change them to Boolean because that's what Boolean variables are. They're 0, if 0 false, 1 true. But let's just change to double. All numeric variables, just get in the habit of changing them to a double data type, and you probably won't run into any problems. So let's apply this. Let's run our workflow, and let's look at the output of our select tool. Here's the output of our select tool. If we click on a variable, let's say ID, well, we would have to attach a browse now. If we attach a browse to our select tool and we hit run, we click on the browse tool and we click on ID, we see that the type of that variable is now double. Whereas up here, in our original data set, ID was type vString. It's because we've applied the select tool and we've changed the types of the variables. Notice that job time, up here, job time has been renamed to time on job, because that's what we did here in the select tool. We renamed that one, and so forth. Now, if there's a variable that you don't want to show, then you can uncheck it here and it will remove that field in the output. But we want to keep all these fields or variables to this point. Alright, now let's change the birth date variable or field to a DateTime data type. Currently birth date is a vString data type. So we take the DateTime tool, we can attach it to our select tool here. And so this comes up over here in the tool configuration. Which string field do you want to convert? And it gives you all your options. So there are 4 string fields in our data set, and we have to choose which one do we want to convert to a DateTime data type. So we're going to convert the birth date field, specify the new column name or the new field name. I'm just going to choose the same name. Now what Alteryx is going to do, it will not, you can't have 2 fields that have the same name. So I can type the same name, but Alteryx is going to call the new field birthdate2. You'll see that. Select the format that matches the incoming string field. Oh, and notice up here, we're converting from string to DateTime format. We're converting this variable, or this field, from string to DateTime. If you wanted to convert it from DateTime to string format, you would check this. Alright, select the format that matches the incoming string. Birth date, what format is it in? If we go look at birth date here, it's in the format day, dash, month, dash, year. So we go back here, excuse me, and we're looking for the format day, dd, dash, month, but no period, dash, year, right? If you look here, it's day, dash, month, no period, or an abbreviation of the month, 3 letters for the month, and then dash year for, the complete year. And I don't see that format anywhere in here. If you look at it carefully, there isn't, that format is not here. You can look through it. I mean, this is as close as it gets, this one right here. And so if you can't find the exact format in the list, then you click custom and you go down here and you type the format. It's day, dash, MON for month, dash, Y. And it gives you an example here, and you can look and check that this example looks like one of the dates. And then it shows you what the output will be. This is the default output in Alteryx for the date, for a date variable. It puts the year first, then the month, and the day. So we're going to apply, we're going to hit run. Now, there were multiple fields named birth date. We titled the new field birth date as well, and so Alteryx just gave us a warning. It's going to convert that new field to it's going to call the new field birth date 2. And then it said birth date 2 cannot convert null to DateTime format. And the reason is, remember, one of our birth dates had a null value in it. If we look at the birth date field, the birth date column, in row 470, there's a null value, so it tries to convert this to a DateTime format, but it can't. So that's fine. Look at our output here. We notice here's our birth date 2 field. Alteryx automatically adds, when it adds the new field with the correct format, it adds it at the very end of the data set. It tacks on a column at the end. And notice it did not convert the row 470 because it's null. But it converted all the other ones. Right? So this one here was converted to, so the 3rd of February 1952 was converted to this format. And now birth date 2 has DateTime format, whereas birth date has string format. So now what we can do is we can attach a select tool to our output from this step, and we can remove the birth date field. We don't want that. That has a string format. We want the birth date to field. That has a date time format, as you can see here, because it's been changed. But let's rename our birth date to birth date, because we're removing this one. And then let's move this field up to where birth date was. So we just go click the up, and it moves that variable so that it's right beside gender. Hit apply, and let's run. And if we look at the output from our select tool now, we have ID, gender, birth date with the correct data type, education, job category, salary, and so forth. And the original birth date field has been removed because we unchecked it right here. Doesn't show up in the output. All right. So that's what the select tool does, and the date time tool. Let's look at the output data tool. What if we want to output this data set to a file, like a .csv file or a .excel file? Well, we get an output data tool. We attach it here. So we're going to output the output from this tool is going to be output to this file, and we have to choose where we want to put the file and what we want to call it. Let's put it on our desktop, and let's just call it sample. And let's choose our file type. Do we want to make it a Microsoft Excel file, or do we want to make it a CSV file? Let's just make it a CSV file. And we hit save. And then we hit apply here. And then we'll run. As soon as we run this, the output from this tool will get written to this file. And if we look on our desktop, here's our file. And here is the output. ID, gender, birth date. Now Excel has taken Alteryx's format, which was for birth date, it was the year and then the month and then the day. Excel converts that month, day, year. Then our education, our job category, our salary, our beginning salary, our time on job, our previous experience in minority, and there's our data set. It output it to a .csv file. It's as simple as that. That's how you output data to a file from Alteryx. We show how to bring data in from a file into Alteryx and then do some stuff to the data, and then we can output what we did to a different file if we want to. All right, there's one other thing I wanted to cover in this video, and that was the text input tool. So to do that, let's start a new workflow. And by the way, we can save our workflow. I haven't talked about this yet. If we want to save what we've done here, we can save our workflow. The way you save a workflow is you just go to File, Save As, and let's see. No, actually, let's just click anywhere in here and go and push Ctrl and S. It saves the workflow as a .yxmd file. We could put it on our desktop. We could call it whatever, example, and we can hit save. And now we could get rid of that. We could close that. And anytime we want to open that workflow, here it is right here. When we come into Alteryx, we can go to File, we can go to Open Workflow. We can browse our computer. We can find our example workflow on our desktop. We can hit Open, and it opens our workflow that we were working with. So that's how you save a workflow in Alteryx. All right, let's teach you the text input tool. Let me get rid of that. So we have this blank workflow here. Let's drag and drop a text input tool onto the workflow palette here. And with text input, this is what you use. This is the tool you use to create data. And so you see over here in the tool configuration, we can start typing data. Let's give the first field the name, I don't know. Let's just say give it name. So this is going to be a little data set where it has the person's name and their age. Second field we'll call age. And then we'll just make up some data. Mike, he's 23. Sally, she's 34. And Bob, excuse me, he's 56. Hit apply, and then let's hit run. Here's the output here's the output from our data set that we just created. It says Bob, this cell has trailing spaces. I must have added a space in here. Yeah, I did add a space. So if I get rid of that space, hit apply, and then no error. So everything you type, the characters plus the spaces, it counts. And that's what it was warning us about. So here's our data set here. We could attach a select tool to that. And we could change, notice it's given name a string data type. It's given age a byte data type. So we want to give age a double data type, and string is fine for name, but we could just call it vstring so that it could accept a variable width. Variables, V stands for variable. In case the name is long, it'll accept up to 254 characters. Hit apply and hit run. So here's our data. Now we could output this data to a file. We've created this data set. We could output this. We bring an output data tool, drag and drop here. Let's output it to our desktop, and we'll call it sample created data set. And we could choose whatever file type we want. We'll choose a .csv file and we'll hit save. And then we can hit apply here. We don't have to do that though, as I talked about in the first video. We can hit run, and it will have created an CSV file on our desktop, and here's our data set that we made. First column's name, second column's age. There's Mike, Sally, Bob, and there are their ages. Now, let's try to make a change back here in our input. Let's add another row. We'll call it, I don't know, John. And we'll give him an age of 12. And hit apply. And I'm going to hit run. And what it's going to do is it's going to try to, create the file sample created dataset.csv on our desktop with this will be the new data set though. But I have the file open right now. So it should give me an error. See? Error creating the file. The process cannot access the file because it is being, I think it says over here, it is being used by another process. So we need to close the file. Then we can run this. I can hit apply. Then we run this. And if we look at our file now that it created, you can see it has the extra row for John, age 12. All right. In this video, to summarize, I walked you through 4 new tools. First, we looked at the select tool. You use this tool to change data types of variables and rename variables. Then we looked at the DateTime tool. This tool is used exclusively for changing a variable that you want to have a DateTime format from string to DateTime format. Or if you want a variable that has a DateTime format back to string, it'll do that as well. And we use this to change our variable birth date to the right format. The third tool we looked at is the output data tool. This is the tool you use if you want to output if you want an output data set in your results to be written to a file on your computer and create a new file essentially. Whatever file type you want, CSV, Excel, it'll create the file type on your computer, but you do it with the output data tool. And then finally, if you want to create your own data set, you're not bringing in an existing data set. You want to create the data yourself, you would use a text input tool. Sometimes you might want to use this tool. We'll use the tool later. I'll show you in another video when you might want to use this tool. It's not often that you use text input because you usually don't create data yourself. You get it from somewhere else. But that's the video.